Again, thank you for the invitation. As I'm really happy to be part of Pro Bono Week and to be participating in this. The Ayadee Foundation has been doing a lot of pro bono work, or primarily pro bono work, as we help companies, nations, individuals, policymakers figure out how they can use new technologies to reach the UN SDGs. Most of our work has been around blockchain technology so far, because our private company, Ayadee.io, has been working with blockchain technology and developing tools in that space. And we've used that around the area of blockchain for transparency, especially with supply chains. And our focus has been SDG 12, responsible consumption and production. We definitely do work in other spaces as well, but this is where we got our impetus from, where in May of 2020, we tackled supply chain issues of food supply chains being disrupted globally and created our food waste lab. And since then, we decided to have a fellowship I'll talk a bit about today. And this is where we train young professionals how to develop new pilot projects using blockchain technology to trace transparency in supply chains. Our first cohort was much more broad, and most of the use cases were in agriculture and also in textiles. This second cohort still can include agriculture and textiles, and likely some of our pilots will be in those spaces, but we'll be also looking at how do we trace human rights and labor issues in global supply chains. I think this is a big issue a lot of people in the pro bono community here care about, of what is happening in our supply chains. Where does our food come from? Where do our clothing items come from? Who worked on them? Were these workers fairly treated? And so we're looking at how we can trace this. And we have a lot of ideas of how to do that. And at the same time, we want to bring together experts to talk about this in more detail. So we'll have experts from, on one hand, the tech space, from tech startups, from big enterprises, from multinational corporations who are managing their supply chains with whatever their current manners are. But on the other hand, we'll also have people from the human rights space, human rights NGOs, labor unions, lawyers who are focused on that space, government and other policy-making officials. And we're looking to bring them together and come up with new solutions, new ideas, because the tech side, although it might sound scary to think about blockchain and these new technologies, is actually the easier part. The toughest part is coming up with the idea of what do we track? What is useful information to share with the public? And how do we decide what that is? How do we disseminate that information? So we'll be having working groups as well as seminars with experts coming together, working on ideas, and we'll test those ideas in our pilots. As those pilot projects test, can we track the things that the working groups came up with as being useful to track? So in this presentation today, I'm going to first go through how the fellowship program works and what we're doing, because that methodology can also be replicated as you look to solve other problems and to bring together groups to solve other issues. It's not only necessarily in this tech space that this can be applied, but in other spaces as well. I think the Pro Bono Network could use the same methodology. And I'm happy, of course, to share these slides and to share methodology with others who are looking to create training programs that are similar to this. As well, I'll touch on briefly of what we did at the hackathon. That was a very quickly built event where we brought together 100 leaders, many who were BMW responsible leaders, a lot of them were active in the Pro Bono Network as well. And we did that within a 10-day span of planning. And we had participants from 30 countries from across various sectors who came together for that hackathon back in May of 2020. I'll touch on that briefly. And at the end, I'll close with a little information about blockchain technology and traceability and how it can be used. And if people come onto the call and have questions on that, I can go into more detail on that. As well, that can be a full presentation on its own. And I can also direct people to some other presentations I've given in the past that are also on YouTube about that topic. Going onward. So the Ayadee Foundation, as I said, we bring together global experts and innovators to find tech solutions to the UN SDGs. We are focused on responsible consumption and production, including the Food Waste Lab, which looks primarily at SDG 12.3, reducing food loss and waste. That's something that the UN Food and Agriculture Organization has brought us to panels and webinars to speak about as well. And now we're in the process of launching our Center for Human Rights and Technology. And this will have a focus on labor rights and global supply chains. And this ranges again from the labor lawyers and human rights lawyers who are helping lead the policy side of this, to our tech experts who figure out how to build it and what's feasible to be built. So this foundation, our fellowship program, we're going to be training 10 fellows applying blockchain sustainable supply chains. Again, this is our second iteration. We've done this once before. We'll have a multidisciplinary group of experts, both to share their knowledge of the fellows as well as to develop solutions. We're starting this month. We're finalizing our recruitment now of applicants. So there's still some time that if you know a really good candidate for this, we're looking for young professionals, either graduate students or fairly recent graduates, or at least people young at heart, who want to learn how they can develop blockchain-based pilot projects, how they can develop this within their own organizations or enterprises. And we'll give them pilot projects or work with them to develop pilot projects in the course of this program. And when I say multidisciplinary experts, I really mean multidisciplinary. In the tech space, we'll have people who are experts on blockchain areas like non-fungible technologies and decentralized autonomous organizations and smart contracts. We'll also have experts in artificial intelligence and IoT as part of this. But in the policy side, we'll have human rights lawyers, we'll have labor union members, we'll have people who are government policymakers, human rights officers from embassies who report on human rights abuses they see in the countries they work on. We'll have a wide variety of experts coming together and developing solutions, people who normally wouldn't be in the same room together, that will put together to see what they can develop that wouldn't happen otherwise. Pilot project hosts, this is what we expectation would be if a company is going to host a pilot, if they're going to be having a team member who's going to help them figure out how to trace their supply chain. In this case, they can expect that they should assign a point of contact to interact with the Ayadee Foundation fellow on a weekly basis. The fellows, again, are the young professionals that we're picking to be trained in this program and to have real implementable training as they'll be implementing these real projects during the time of this period. And that the pilot project companies, they can also be expected to give us feedback on track, what works, what didn't work. To clarify, I refer to track here because these pilot companies will be given free use of Ayadee's supply chain tracking tool, Track. Not that we're just trying to promote our product, though. It's that simply we can use this for free. We know how it works. And as I said, the harder solution is figuring out what things are we tracking, what data are we putting into a supply chain. The tech side is relatively easy, but this harder part of figuring out what to track, we want our fellows to be really focused on that. And so for that, we give them use of our system we've already developed. If they decide they want other functions or other features, they'll be able to think of that during the program. And it's really easy to find a good software developer to build whichever function one wants at this stage. However, we want them to think through the hard questions right now. What information are we tracking for these pilot project companies, to work with them on figuring that out, and not to have to think about how do we raise money, which blockchain do we build on. Those are easier issues. So the pilot companies will be working closely with those fellows and determining what is useful to track, what are the human rights issues, what are the labor issues we can trace in supply chains. In parallel, this will, of course, also capture data that will help companies with their efficiency, with their operations, but will also be able to show transparently, more than any inspector coming periodically could show, how workers are treated and how well they're respected and the conditions. So strong companies can proudly show, hey, we take care of our people. And we're not just telling you a story. You can see this recorded verifiably and unchangeably in the blockchain. And so with that, we've selected our pilot companies out of our own network, very closely vetting who we know, who we think would be a good fit. But if somebody's interested in a pilot project, we welcome people approaching us on that topic as well. And maybe for future rounds of the fellowship, we can add people or work on new pilots together. Now, so far as the fellows have a fair amount of resources we give them. And this is where I think it's interesting to look at for other training programs. If those of you on this call are looking to create your own trainings as well, to look at what we did and see if there's things that you can steal from us that are useful, that we're doing that might be useful for others who are organizing trainings. Each one of these fellows will have a fellow mentor. This mentor will not be a tech expert. They could be, but this fellow mentor is mainly meant more like a coach, somebody who's an experienced business or government leader who knows strategy, who knows how to ask the tough questions. And they'll also have access on a weekly basis to topic mentors. These will be people who have deep expertise in either a particular function or a particular industry. So they may have deep expertise in artificial intelligence or smart contracts or other areas of the blockchain. Or on the other hand, these topic mentors could also be somebody who has deep industry knowledge of the agriculture industry, or within that a particular thing like fruits and vegetables, or livestock, or cotton textiles, or wool textiles, whatever it may be. These will be specific deep experts who will both lead trainings and be available to mentors, to fellows as a mentor to speak on. So this is something that, again, other programs may look at this and say, hey, we can do this based on our industry, our sector, the problems we're looking to solve. We're requiring the fellows to attend scheduled meetings and have a minimum number of meetings with their mentor, as well as group trainings and community-wide forum events. The reason this is important, these community-wide events, is through the sharing of ideas, through this very multidisciplinary group of both experts and individual fellows. That's where some of the best ideas will come, as people are brainstorming together, as they're sharing ideas together, as they go through the exercises of developing blue sky thinking around new ideas, new concepts. This crashing up together of experts from different spaces is where the new ideas will come and the new innovations will come. So we really encourage and require people to attend the community events as well if they're participating as fellows in the program. And of course, we encourage the mentors and the pilot companies to come to those as well. You know, we have open applications for this, but we're also looking based on recommendations that we know from within our network of people who say that these are high potential individuals. Again, at the end, I'll share with you where the link is to apply. With limited spaces available, we're finalizing our selection process for the current cohort now, but we can also look to plan for the future, for future cohorts as well. And again, what else the fellows can expect? They can expect their work to be showcased throughout our media outlets, throughout our YouTube channel, throughout our social media, through regular traditional media that we interact with. If they successfully complete the program, they'll be accepted into the Ayadee community and continue to have access to our networks, to our introductions, and they'll be continued have permission to use the Ayadee track system throughout the life of the pilot projects they're working on. The fellow mentors, and I've spoken briefly on them already, they'll have specific industry and business experience. They'll be coming from senior and executive leadership positions. We've had a great batch of these, both for the hackathon as well as for the last round of the cohort, or last cohort of the fellowship program. We have a great batch lined up this time as well. Fellow mentors are busy people, but we can expect them to have one mentoring call a week. Over an 8 to 10 week period, we expect this to be around 10 hours that they're really committed to, of having that weekly call for maybe 45 minutes. It could be less. It could be divided up differently depending on what works best for the fellow mentor and for the fellow. We want to make sure they're available in some form on a weekly basis to those fellows to give them guidance, to give them feedback. Of course, they can do more than those 8 to 10 weeks if they choose to participate in our programs, coming to community events, coming to the training events, where they, of course, are welcome to come and learn as well. What else can they expect? Yes, they'll be invited to our events. They'll be offered the opportunity to be showcased in our media as well. And how they're selected, again, this comes from recommendations of our community and the people we know. We don't do an open application. Our fellow mentors we're very, very selective about. So the tough vetting process of seeing who we know who would be a good fit. And we had really great experience with that so far. Topic mentors, similar on selection, but they're picked based on being a really top expert in their field, being really known as the top expert at what we're asking them to speak about and be an expert on. And they'll be invited to attend all available learning formats, not just those they're speaking at. They could be also featured in the Ayadee at a Glance showcase specials, and if desired, they can be in our other social media outlets as well. Sponsors. Now, this is different from the pilot companies. You're not necessarily looking to have a pilot offered at your organization, but if you want to be a sponsor of our program, if you want to participate without having a pilot project, without having the time to be a mentor, to be a topic mentor, there's the opportunity to be a sponsor of the event. And this would allow your brand to be showcased at our events, also to attend the small group sessions that are designed for training of the fellows. And these, where there's some level of financial sponsorship, this can be determined based on the level of activity someone wants, and the level that's accessible for their organization. And sponsors can expect to have ongoing invitations to future events as well, and access to our expert networks, as well as media exposure for their contributions. We will also have interns, and we're in the process of finalizing the recruitment of interns as well. These are mainly undergrads, but we have some graduate student level interns as well. And they'll also have unique access to our training programs, specifically designed for the interns. They'll also learn how to use Track, our supply chain tracking system. So again, they can help the fellows and support the fellows, support the pilot companies. They'll actually have more in-depth training in this program than others will. And they'll be chosen based on simply their expectation that they can perform well, that they can contribute. They don't have to be from a particular academic discipline. Really, it's their passion and their ability to learn is what really matters. And they'll have a variety of opportunities, from designing and implementation of the projects to learning opportunities to speaking with leaders in government, law, technology, and enterprises. And high performers may receive offers of employment after the program is complete. Fireside chats, this last group, Fireside chatters, these are just plain inspiring people. They're not necessarily a topic expert. They're not necessarily an industry expert. These are people who've just done something inspirational or have some inspirational ability that they can share with people. We've had, for example, one talk from an art historian about art in the history of supply chains, how supply chains have been reflected in artwork throughout the centuries. This doesn't seem directly relevant to how a tech supply chain works, but it can inspire new thoughts and new ideas. Other activities in the space we've had have been meditation exercises, laughter yoga exercises. So there's a wide variety of fireside chats. And these fireside chatters, the people who deliver those, we can expect them to have some kind of event at least once per week. Again, an individual may only do one event, but we'll have at least one fireside chat per week. The learning formats, again, this is something that I think others who are looking to create a similar event may find useful. We'll start with an onboarding workshop, and this is where the selected fellows will be introduced to the program's objectives, requirements, and timelines. We'll similarly have an onboarding for the mentors, both the topic and the fellow mentors. We want to make sure everyone has the right expectations and clearly knows what's happening and how it's happening. We'll have tech workshops. These will be a bit longer formats, and these will focus deeply on technology topics, making sure you understand well what is going on and doing a hands-on workshop in many cases. If we're doing a workshop on the Ayadee track system, we'll have you log in and create the account you'll be using in that case, and really go through implementing it using the tool and making sure one understands the ins and outs of it. The deep dives, these will be shorter, but we'll go very deep into one specific topic. One of the deep dives we had last year was about cattle supply chains, slaughterhouses specifically, and how slaughterhouses were impacted by disruptions of global supply chains. Me as a vegetarian, not my favorite topic, but it was super functional and super useful to see, wow, that's a barrier, and how the machines work, how the systems work that I would not have known about without this expert in that system here speaking. And if somebody's looking at food supply chains, obviously meat's a big part of it. So knowing those kind of barriers that people were facing and how to get around those disruptions, those barriers, that made that kind of expertise really important. Again, these deep dives, usually we're just 15, 20 minutes of a very deep presentation on a specific subject, with a little bit of time for questions afterwards. And sometimes those ran over, giving additional time for follow-up questions, or very often the speakers were kind enough to be available for email and other messages after as well. And all of these we record and we post these on our YouTube channel as well. So if someone goes to the Ayadee Foundation YouTube channel now, you'd see from our past hackathon, for example, about 18 different videos from that event. Not all of them are public. I just misspoke when I said all of them are public. Some speakers request that they not be shared. So some of these deep dives you get will be really insider views that aren't made public in the end. In other learning formats, we have check-in hours with a core team, the Ayadee coaches are available to support fellows, junior fellows, interns with any questions they may have. We have community gatherings, again, it's informal space where everybody can share what they're working on, share general questions. Fireside chats we discussed a moment ago. The pitch sessions, we're not only making a pitch when the project is finished at the end, Rather, we'll have interim mini pitches of, hey, what's our progress? What are our challenges? Where do we stand? Maybe others in the community who have similar projects or even very different projects may face similar challenges. Be able to share and give feedback to each other. Again, expert webinars. These will be open to the entire Ayadee Foundation, in some cases to the general public as well. We'll make webinar minutes and policy papers, because when we crash together these experts from various divergent fields, we expect new ideas to come out of these, out of both these larger group webinars and smaller groups that we break people out into for working groups. And we want to take minutes of these and see what are the new ideas that come out, and draft short policy papers about these, even just 2-3 page briefs. Of here's some great new ideas that came together when we had these kinds of experts in the same room, or the same virtual room at least. We'll also take some of our videos, put them up on the YouTube channel like we've done in the past, and short excerpts can be edited for shorter media pieces. We take the audio from our events, and we've in the past experimented with making podcasts. We're doing that in some of our future events. And we keep our Slack channel open as an ongoing repository where people who join that can then share articles, share information, make comments, and that kind of ongoing conversation in something like a Slack channel keeps it there so it's searchable and findable at a later date, as opposed to a more closed group like email or WhatsApp messages, where you might not be able to as easily find and share information from past events and past discussions. Again, our tool, Track, that's a simple idea of just making it as simple as possible. This is now migrated from the Ayadee.io website to track.id. So that's being relaunched as well, something we just put in our newsletter that we sent out this morning. So general information about contact information. If now that we've got Diego and Trini have joined us, if there is questions about how blockchain works, I have slides that follow this that go into more detail about how blockchain works with supply chains and tracking. But if there's not questions on that space, we'll just take questions generally. Now, Diego and Trini, you missed the first part of this, so we can also go back or explain any general questions that you may have as well.
Hi, Peter. I don't know if you can hear me.
I hear you, yes.
Perfect, thank you. I'm sorry I'm late, and I'm very interested if you could go back a little bit and backtrack just the general concept on blockchain and how it relates to something that it's not usually in the conversation when we're discussing. Yeah.
Great. Well, that's actually a perfect question at this stage, because the first part I talked more about how the foundation operates and how the fellowship program operates. And the slides that come after this are the ones that talk about blockchain. So I'll dig right into those next. So in this case, these slides are about how it would work with agricultural value chains, but this can apply to other kinds of value chains or supply chains as well. So Track, our own tool, is a blockchain-based supply chain system where we really were focused when we developed it and make it fast and easy to use, inexpensive. Our initial users were coffee farmers in El Salvador. So a lot of these farm workers had maybe 2 or 3 years of formal schooling. So we had to make something that was simple enough that someone who really only had basic literacy could still use this and enter data. And when we talk about blockchain and simplicity, those are 2 words that often don't go together. And why we use blockchain is because once the data is in the system, it can't be changed. You can't delete something in the blockchain. So you cannot easily hide something. If there's some kind of abuse or some kind of problem and somebody's captured it in the blockchain, things can't be hidden. So in some ways, this is more effective even than having a fair trade inspector or others who come visit on site, because you know whatever data is recorded, it's there. And the way our system is built and many others, you had the date and the time and the location when an entry is made, so you know where that entry came from. So it's difficult to lie. It's difficult to put fake information in. If you're to put a picture of a very nice looking coffee harvest in, and it was a picture you just uploaded, you found somewhere online, and we see, oh, well, that entry was made from the capital city of the country, not from the location of a farm. You can detect that there's a fake or there's fraud in that space as well. And why we put this in the blockchain no one party has control over this data then. It's distributed. In any blockchain system, you may have as many as millions of different computers that are part of it. So even if we only have 5 or 6 farmers that are part of our supply chain in a particular pilot project, our system is built on the Stellar blockchain. Stellar is the 22nd largest blockchain. So that means there's millions of computers globally that are each having encrypted hash or a record that that data exists being put onto them. So in order to delete that data or to change it, someone would have to hack into not just one computer, but the majority of these several million computers, and do so before anyone else has made another entry into the system. This is where this transparency comes in that gives us this confidence that if data is in the system, we know that nobody can manipulate it, no middleman could change or delete it. This is true when we have a public blockchain system. There's others that are private blockchains where similarly it's difficult to delete or change, but there may be one party that controls it. If we're a public blockchain, like our track system is being built on Stellar, many others are built on Ethereum, that you know that someone would have to control that whole system in order to change it. Whereas with a traditional database, there's one IT administrator in a company and they could just delete the whole file. They could change anything and there doesn't have to be a record of any changes that were made. Whereas this, even if we're the major company and we own the majority of the tokens in this supply chain or backing up this particular blockchain-based system, we can't go and change or delete something in it. So this gives confidence to consumers, people throughout the supply chain, that those entries that are in the system really were made at the date and the time and the location they were made. Somebody still could try to find ways to lie and put fake information in, but at least we know that nobody's deleting things, nobody's changing things, because after the fact they see like, oh, it was reported that tomatoes were stored at the wrong temperature. Let's delete that before we have to pay a fee for not storing these vegetables properly or something of that nature. Or similarly, if there's a case where maybe someone took pictures and there happened to be some children in the background in this factory, if that picture is deleted, then there is a way to hide pictures within our system. But if you see there's a huge amount of pictures hidden, there is no way to delete the entries that there was an entry there. So people could still detect, wait, there's something they're hiding. There's some kind of fraud. There's something that should be investigated. We created that hide function because sometimes it's simply a farm worker took a picture of his shoe or something by accident. And so we don't need to show those pictures publicly. But if there's 100 entries in a system and you see 95 of them are hidden, that starts raising flags that maybe there's something that we need to investigate or dig deeper into. Again, why can't this data be changed? I've spoken briefly to this already, but a great analogy to this is if you're building a house out of bricks, and let's say I have laid my first row of bricks for the house, and I have laid another row of bricks on top of it, another row of bricks on top of that, and I realize, oh, the brick on the ground level of the house is the wrong color. I want to change that and put a different color brick there. I want to take it out. Now that you've got all the weight, these other bricks built on top of it, you can't pull that brick out because there's so much weight on top of it. It's similar that with the blockchain, you can't go back, especially after other data is put on top of it, and delete that or change anything. And again, as I spoke about keeping control or taking control of the majority of a system, that would need control of 51% of a blockchain network. And if you have millions of computers in a network, then you'd have to hack into 51% of millions of different computers before anybody else makes another transaction onto that network. It's virtually impossible. And so this is where maybe a small brand new blockchain network or private blockchain that only has 5, 6, or 10 computers that are controlling it, those you're able to hack into. But something built on a large blockchain network that you won't be able to hack. And so that gives that security. Doesn't this involve cryptocurrency? Yes, they all do. But it doesn't mean that you have to be a cryptocurrency trader or speculator or buying Bitcoin and using it for payments. What we're talking about here is that every time a piece of data goes into the blockchain, there's actually been a transaction that takes place. In most cases, or many cases, if you're sending a payment to somebody, you may have a short message that's attached to it. What we've done with this is that when you make an entry into our blockchain, you are using our token. We allot a certain number amount of our cryptocurrency to users of this, whether they're paying a monthly fee or whether they're a pilot project or a nonprofit that we just give tokens to. And each time you make an entry, one token is used. And the way we've structured our system, that token is effectively burned. That token doesn't exist anymore. And that token at this stage would cost fractions of a penny. So its cost is insignificant, but that transaction needs to take place. If that token was taken from your wallet, from your digital ID and sent somewhere, because by that being sent somewhere, a message attached to it goes into the blockchain. So in our case, a hash of the data, a short message is sent into the blockchain each time one transaction takes place with a tracked token. So each time when on our app, you hit the send button, you've taken a picture, you've entered data, you've entered whatever note, and you hit send. When you hit send, one tracked token is used. That token disappears forever. But then a record that you made that entry goes into the blockchain. And that record will include the date, the time, the location, maybe a short message or the name of the batch. It will only be text. If there's a picture, that picture actually won't be going to the blockchain because that's too large of a file. But the picture or more detailed attachments will actually be stored in a server in a cloud that we control. But if you were to delete or hide that picture, or if we were to delete or hide that picture, there's still proof in the blockchain that that entry exists and the entry was made. So again, that's where on the anti-corruption side, or looking through abuses in supply chains, if we see there's this massive amount of entries made and the majority are hidden, we know there's something to investigate. And again, with our system, as we say here about cryptocurrency, yes, we've created these tokens, but we're not creating it as a system where we're looking to have people speculate and buy our tokens, like buying Bitcoin, hoping it goes up in value. It's rather meant to be what we call a utility token. It's used for specific use. Yes, you could trade it, and you could trade it outside of our system, but it's meant to be used as something where you use it when you make an entry, it just gets burned, it's used at that point, and that allows it a piece of data to be entered into the blockchain. Again, today we're not going to actually walk through this demo of the process, but we at Ayadee.io is our main website. We've actually just migrated that to track.id, and at track.id we'll create an account and go through that. Projects we've worked on recently, or some of which are ongoing, and include coffee in El Salvador, also tracking coffee from Costa Rica, Germany, coming from India, olive oil from Tunisia to the US, cassava, hibiscus. Some things that aren't added here yet are cotton in Egypt, also textile products here in Tunisia. We also have fresh fruits coming from Burundi. So a lot of new projects that are launching as well, but mainly the food and textile spaces so far.